You see it everywhere. On the wrists of famous actors, sports stars, and businessmen, even on fictional characters from movies and TV shows. Despite its growing prevalence, there's something about the Rolex watch that feels very exclusive and posh. There is something about this luxury brand that makes it seem so expensive, with the entry-level models costing a whopping $5,000. So why do Rolex watches have such a high price tag? But before you dive deep into the ocean of knowledge, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notifications. This way, you'll always be notified first whenever we come up with something new. Now, let's take a look at what makes these watches so rare and expensive. Manufacturing of the watches. The brand has its own scientific laboratory and research and development department. In these labs, professionals research on how to level up the production of new watches and better the manufacturing process. Rolex uses a specific kind of steel in its watches, which is not a cup of tea for just anyone. The material of Rolex watches is more corrosion and rust-resistant than any other brand, and the steel used is also harder than the others. The watchmaking giant also has its own in-house factory, which manufactures its own gold. The watches are assembled manually by hands. Yes, you heard that right. Quality and precision. The watches go through extensive testing and accuracy. Apart from that, their service work is top-notch, so in case of any issues a customer might have with the watch, the brand ensures that they fix it in time. Every watch goes through an accuracy check by its chronometer testing institutes. Given the accuracy and price used in the making, Rolex watches have to be run through some of the most sophisticated CNC machinery. Rolex has a complete team of gemologists at its core. This team looks after all the purchasing and checking of precious gems, including platinum and diamond. The gems are then sent forward to be embedded onto the various luxury Rolex models. The company also takes assistance from traditional and experienced jewelers who help them with setting precious stones and diamonds to perfection. Cutting-edge technology. Rolex watches are incredibly water-resistant. Watches like the Rolex Submariner are water-resistant up to even 300 meters. To test this measure to perfection, each Rolex dive watch is actually tested under pressurized containers, following which they are checked in actual water bodies. Manual hard work. Despite the fact that Rolex has an extremely advanced watchmaking machinery that files and catalogs, people operate most of the machinery and they work at assembling everything themselves, down to the movements of the watches themselves. The limited production of a Rolex watch. Rolex sells around 1 million watches every year, and despite its popularity, the number has shown no decrease at all for all these decades. However, Rolex has, to nobody's surprise, seen the demand of the watches tremendously outgrow its supply. The production of Rolex watches is limited in number as compared to other brands. Materials used. The materials used in the watches include 904L stainless steel and are almost impossible to destroy. Other than Rolex, no other watch brand employs the same material in the manufacturing. Rolex watches are blessed with immense beauty. Apart from high-quality, luxurious steel, One also gets the intricately placed details in the watches, and that makes them all the more precious and pricey. The longevity of Rolex watches is crazy so much so that you can even pass them down to your future generations. The current preference of consumers. When it comes to luxury items, most customers are already sold. They already know what they want and have their own preference for a luxury item. These customers don't need to be convinced to spend money on something extravagant. Rolex watches already have a very high reputation. And the company has been around for over a century. This alone is proof that their products are top-notch. So when consumers are shopping for a luxury watch, they often have a Rolex on their mind. The only other option they may have is another luxury brand. Rolex watches are developed under strict control, with a market of at least 800,000 watches sold per annum. They sure do have an edge above their other competitors. For another reason, they don't afford even a single mistake in even one watch. The quality check that goes under the manufacturing of these watches is very sophisticated and yet very extensively maintained. For instance, the stones in the watches should not be apart more than a quarter of human hair's thickness. From selection to melting, even that of the gold and silver, everything is undertaken by the brand extremely carefully. However, these watches weren't always this expensive. In the 1950s, the brand used to sell watches at more affordable prices. The prices started to skyrocket only after the huge popularity and demand of the watch as a symbol of luxury and being elite. It'd fascinate you to know that a $5,000 entry-level Rolex was extremely cheap in the 1950s. On evaluating the watch's value according to modern standards, it would have cost you only $1,460 back in the day. However, it shouldn't be overlooked that most watches back then were sold within the ranges of $8,000 to $12,000, which implies that the consumer's attraction for the pricier varieties was similar to modern times even 70 years ago. But did you know that the watches are actually not that expensive? Given the popular misconception, it's very easy to buy the fact that Rolex watches are ultra-expensive. But do you know that there exist basic models of Rolex watches that are priced at a comparatively affordable price of $4,000? Indeed, there are watches that go beyond even $50,000, but these watches are worth all that price. If maintained extremely well, these watches can go on functioning normally from about 20 years to even being able to provide you with a bond of a lifetime. The 18K Everose and white gold watches are usually refined from 24K gold by Rolex, which is why these watches look so much more stunning as compared to their counterparts. The aforementioned manufacturing and designing costs are just a fraction that contributes to the watch's price. The most valuable and important part, however, is the brand itself. Rolex brand has been around for around 100 years now, and its name in the world of luxuries is enough to make heads turn. The watches are quite exclusive. So much so that the company even implements producing watches in a limited number as a strategy to raise the prices. You, however, would not just be paying for a hand accessory when purchasing a Rolex. You're also making yourself own a product that showcases a beautiful blend of authenticity and engineering. The watches are reliable, classy, and boast flawlessness in every bit of it. You might want to try having a Rolex yourself, too, when you feel the time is right for you to get one. And do let us know how it feels to be wearing one of the most expensive luxuries in the world, right on your hand. What are your opinions on Rolex watches? Are you fond of Rolex, or do you think the watches are overpriced? Do let us know in the comments below.